Hey doc, if we are true carnivores, why are we able to metabolize carbs, sugar, or develop the ability to do so in the first place? Thanks. Well, look, we weren't always carnivores. We had the ability to eat these sorts of things historically, and so it does give a survival advantage because we can eat other things, we can survive on them. Um, and when you're looking at things in evolutionary terms, you don't lose the ability to do something unless it confers a survival advantage to do so. So because that's just how that works. Because the ones that don't have that trait tend to die off, and they tend not to have kids. And so it's that trait that actually is a big survival advantage. So having the ability to break down carbs and sugars and absorb them is an advantage to anybody, because if you don't have that ability, then you're limiting more resources. And in a famine period, when you're trying to eat something else, that's not that great. But pretty much any animal can absorb simple carbohydrates. Not all animals make amylase, but most of them do, and so they can still break down starches. Some don't have amylase in their saliva, but they can make it from their pancreas. And either way, they can absorb simple carbohydrates, like simple sugars. And there are carbohydrates in meat. I mean, there's glycogen in meat. And so you actually do get these things on a carnivore diet. So you actually do need this stuff on a carnivore diet, because there are carbohydrates that you're going to break down and absorb as well. It's just not the mass quantities of these things that we see in processed carbs, or starchy vegetables and things like that, or fruit, very sweet, unnaturally sweet fruit that we've arranged, and bred and intensively bred to be much more sweet. So plenty of carnivores do still have that ability. We're no exception. It does confer a survival advantage to be able to eat potatoes and survive. It's just not optimal. But also there are carbohydrates in meat, and so you need that ability there too, to break down the glycogen and certainly absorb the simple sugars. And I mean, you look at your cells. I mean, there are carbohydrate components to many proteins, to many receptors, to many parts of your cell, to many parts of the animal, and so that's important. That's important to be able to contend with that, break it down and absorb it. So yeah, that's not actually abnormal. I've seen some things where they say that like lions and big cats don't make amylase in their saliva, but that doesn't mean they don't make it in their pancreas. And I've seen other ones that said that they do. So I don't know about that. I think it's generally accepted that they don't, but I have actually seen some that said that they did. So it's either way, it doesn't really matter. If we have had that ability because we were herbivorous before, you don't lose that trait unless there's a survival advantage to lose that trait. But also, I mean, even herbivores. I mean, look at gorillas. They're not eating carbs. They're not eating like roots and tubers and starchy vegetables. They're eating fiber, and that fiber, amylase won't break that down. It won't do any of that. It's the bacteria in their gut that is in their hind gut, which is their cecum, which is very, very, very long. Our equivalent is the appendix, because that was a survival advantage to lose that. We did have a very elongated cecum, presumably, and then that shrunk down to almost nothing, because that's very energy dependent. And so we traded our gut length for our brain size, and we needed more nutrient dense food, meat. And so that did give a survival advantage to lose that big useless gut that we weren't using anymore. And so we have a smaller one. So they have a big hind gut, and the bacteria eat the fiber, because it's only bacteria and protozoa and these single-celled organisms that can even make cellulase. Termites don't even make cellulase. It's the protozoa in their gut that eats the cellulose and produce cellulase. And as a byproduct, they produce saturated fat, and then the microorganisms die off and they get absorbed as protein. So do gorillas have amylase? Do gorillas have the ability to break these things down? Why? They don't need it. They're absorbing saturated fat and protein. So it's the same thing. We need fat and protein. Lions need fat and protein. Gorillas need fat and protein, and we get those from our food source. That's really the main thing. Some of us have some amylase, some of us don't. Doesn't really matter. You still just need fat and protein. That's the main thing. Hey everyone, really happy to announce a new sponsor for the show and for everybody down in Australia, Stockman Steaks, who are delivering high quality grass-fed and finished pasture-raised beef and other meats, flash frozen and vacuum sealed to your door, something that I've been enjoying a lot of myself recently as well. They also have a great range of specialty items such as high-fat keto mince and carnivore beef and organs mince with liver, kidneys, and beef heart as well. So use code Chaffee today for a free order of beef mince or another specialty gift along with your order at stockmansteaks.com.au, and I'll see you over there. Thanks, guys. Shane Patterson, thank you for the super chat. GF been trying to increase meat. Girlfriends has been trying to increase meat, but says she has low appetite for red meat and feels sick when eating only meat. Even one meal. Any recommendations? Yeah, look, we're conditioned to think that this is really bad for us. Women especially have taken that to heart, and there's seems to be some sort of psychological reason for that they're just much more likely, they're just much more coachable. And people say this too, that it's just like, when you're coaching girls, they really pay attention, they really listen, they try to do what you tell them to do, and like guys just sort of do whatever the hell they want, and so you don't have as much coachability in some guys, and so you have to, that's why being able to learn, being able to be coachable is a good trait that coaches look for in young athletes. And so, but women seem to have taken that and saying, okay, well, this is bad for me, I'm not going to do that. Okay, makes sense. And if you believe that, that's the right thing to do. Guys are a bit more headstrong, like, yeah, screw that. And so I like it, I enjoy it, so I'm just going to do it. A bit more hedonistic, and that can be good in this circumstance when you're being lied to and you're just trusting your natural instincts. And the other side of it is that it could be very bad because you end up doing things that are bad. In any case, we train ourselves and condition ourselves to think that meat's bad, and to think that fat's bad, and we have a psychosomatic reaction where it makes us physically ill. I would get that in my late 30s when I knew that this was the right way to go. When I would eat fat, I just couldn't do it, and I had to slowly work myself into it. And so that's what you do. Just ease into it. It's just a little bit more, She doesn't have to eat if it doesn't taste good. If she feels unwell, don't eat. That's fine. Your body can tell you that. If meat doesn't taste good, you're not hungry, and you'll eat a lot less. You don't need nearly as much. And so you just eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good. If you can't eat big chunks of fat, you cut a small piece of that fat off, put it with the lean meat, eat that together, and you say like, okay, that actually tastes good together. And you can do that, and you just recondition yourself and really decondition, that programming, that we had of listening to the experts and never eat fat because fat's so bad for you, even though it has never been bad for us ever in human existence. And then the argument goes like, well, but we weren't living all that long. Says who? The census data didn't say that. In the 1800s, if you made it to adulthood, you'd live at some very similar length of time that we live now. It's just average life expectancy from birth was 38 in 1850 because the infant mortality rate was so high. And 50 years later, it was a lot higher than that because infant mortality, or the total life expectancy from birth, was a lot higher because it was the infant mortality rate had improved significantly. And so, it's completely false. Oh, people weren't living long enough in the 1800s and before that to experience these diseases. Like, really? Have you read a book? Because they were written by people, and some of those people actually have biographies, and you can actually see like how long they lived. How old was Mark Twain? How old was Sam Adams when he died? How old was John Adams? Second president of the United States, born in the mid 1700s, died in the mid 1800s. He was 91. All the founding fathers, look them up. They're all in their 80s and 90s when they died. Ben Franklin was 64 when the Revolutionary War broke out. And then, funny enough, I seem to recall that the minimum age required to even apply for the job of president of the United States was 35. Isn't that? Well, that's funny. If everyone dies at 35, that's a funny age to set a minimum. And I'm pretty sure we've had presidents in the 1700s and 1800s, which is funny that because these people are so smart and they know so much, and I'm surely they'd look it up, right? And they'd understand that there's historical figures that we have clear documentation of that were much older than that. And there's, what was it, Socrates? Is that who I'm thinking of? Who was in his 70s and they had to kill him, and he was so sharp that it just pissed everyone off in Athens, so they had to kill him by eating a plant, by the way. They made him drink hemlock. So, I mean, that's just nonsense that people weren't living long enough to experience these diseases. That's just ridiculous. And I just spoke with a gentleman, Dr. Verma from India. He's an emergency physician over in India. And he said he treated a boy who's 17 years old. He came in with a heart attack. 17-year-old kid had a heart attack, right? Vegetarian, by the way, vegan vegetarian. And of this mostly plant-based nation. Everyone says, oh, but plants are so bad for us and meat is so good for us. Explain India. India explains that. 20 years ago, the average person in India only ate 5 kilos of meat a year. A year, right? I eat more than that in a week. Way more than that in a week, And then in the last 20 years, it's actually dropped down to 3 kilos a year, right? And the metabolic disease rate has actually sprung up in that time. It's gotten worse, right? He said something that was like 30% of people have metabolic syndrome and disease, and 30% of people in India had diabetes, full-blown diagnosed diabetes. And this is very, so a lot of people living rurally, they may not ever get that diagnosis. They may not have access to healthcare. So diagnosed diabetes, 30%, that's 3 times the diabetes rate of America, the slovenly Americans who just eat a whole bunch of processed meat and processed foods and red meat. These guys are eating 3 kilos a year, and a lot of them aren't eating any. And 30%, they have 3 times higher diabetes rates. So it's just flat out ridiculous that people even make these contentions. They're either complete liars or just too stupid to take any advice from anyway. Either way, these are not people that you need to listen to. If they're so flagrantly incorrect, either intentionally or because their brains don't work, that like this is no one you want to take advice from in anything else. I mean, people get things wrong, and that's fine. And so I agree with some things that people say, and I disagree with other things that they say. That doesn't mean that I hate them. Broke clock is right twice a day. But some people, when they get these things so intensely wrong, and it's so easy to look up. It's it's just you're like, okay, well, what else are you phoning in? Like we just can't really trust anything you say at this point. Like Ansel Keys, the guy's a known fraud. He was defrauding people for the majority of his career. When did that start? When did he start being a sellout? I mean, presumably he had to do some good work in order to sell his reputation and integrity. But when did that start? Can you trust anything he did? Because he's unscrupulous. Maybe he cut corners on other things. Maybe he just did things and published them just so he could get some recognition. Fits the profile. There are people with Alzheimer's. They say, well, it's this beta amyloid plaques. And that's what's doing. There's a landmark paper that came out, supposedly proving that, showing that, and turned out it was total fraud. It was total garbage. And that just came out last year. So no, that has nothing to do with it. And they just defrauded people just so they could get the reputation, just so they could publish a landmark paper and get their name on the map, and get everyone tenure, and everyone's all happy and patting each other's back. And now they've got tenure, so can't get rid of them. But it's fraud. It's absolute fraud. And so when did the fraud start with Ansel Keys? Who knows? But I just don't trust anything he says. Don't trust anything he does. And and the same thing with these sorts of things. So, long story short, we've been conditioned to think something that is inherently untrue, and we're getting psychosomatic responses as a result of that. So just lead into it. Just ease into it. Eat what tastes good, stop eating when it doesn't taste good, feeling a bit nauseous, just stop. If she has to sort of do a slower transition and include some other stuff too, just eating more fatty meat and less of the other stuff is already going to make a big difference. And if you can start easing into that and eating more and more meat and getting used to the fat, eventually she might be able to just drop everything else, but you don't want to force it, because it might be that she just goes too much and goes, nope, 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 no, I'm not doing this. And just mentally can't get her head around it. And then, might just not really want to do it and not be motivated to do it. So, just, it's okay. It's okay to ease into these things too. So good luck to both of you. Robert Farinelli, thank you for the super chat. Good ways to get heavy metals, mainly lead, out of my body. Just demoed some plaster in an old house and probably got a good dose of lead paint dust. Oh, that's not good. Prevention is the best treatment, right? So it's just, obviously, I'm sure you're wearing masks and all these sorts of things, but hopefully just try to avoid those sorts of things and do wear all the protective gear that you can to avoid any exposure. Things like lead and heavy metals, they're actually very good chelating agents that you can talk to your doctor. You can always, if you're worried about that, I would get tested. I would test your heavy metals. You can get blood tests to do that. Sometimes there's like specialized labs that do that, and there are some doctors that specialize in that sort of thing. But if you end up being high on these things, your body's going to work these things out eventually for most of these things, and you have those forever chemicals, and those aren't going anywhere apparently. But the things like lead, your body can get these things out as long as you stop the exposure and allow your body to work normally on a carnivore diet, right? And so that can help, but depending on what level you are, it might be a good idea to use a chelating agent depending on your level. So just get a check, get a blood test with your doctor, and if your levels are high, for that or other heavy metals that have a chelating agent that can help pull this out of your body, might use that. But just talk to your doctor about that as well. Otherwise, your body will work this stuff out. You just have to stop exposing yourself to it. And if you keep exposing yourself and it's sort of building up and building up, then you might need some help from your doctor. So don't. I like doing things naturally, but there are medicines that actually really do help people, and those are great. I don't have anything against that side of pharmacology. I just, the new iteration of pharmacology where they're just trying to make things that help chronic symptoms, and it's symptom management, and so that you can live with a disease. They're not trying to cure a disease. Something like lead poisoning. There's not too much research going into that, and there's a reason why we haven't had any new breakthroughs or even any new significant research into new antibiotics in the last 3 decades, because you cure something, you have, okay, they're on for 2 weeks and that's it. That's not paying the bills. Something that they have to take every single day for the rest of their lives. That's what buys the yachts, right? And so that's just good business, like that's the direction you go. That's the product we're going to make because that's what's going to make us the most money. That's what's going to make us the most successful. So that's what's happening. So we just need to recognize that and go to other places. But we do have really good medicines for acute things as well. And so, what we need to do is we need to get rid of these chronic diseases ourselves, because they're not going to cure it for us. We need to do that ourselves. Besides, there's no medicine that cures this anyway. The medicine is eating right and just not exposing yourself to poison like lead, but also plants. And so when you stop doing that and you just get healthy, then all of a sudden there's no market for their drugs, really. You're going to force them into doing things that are actually useful to people, because they're very smart people and they can do a lot of good for people. We just need to shift the market over so that it's not profitable for them to perpetuate chronic disease, because there is no chronic disease. We're going to get rid of that, right? That's what we're doing here. But there are good things that your doctor can help you with, and that is definitely one of them. Good luck with that. Hope it's okay. Hope you didn't get too much in your system. The Alligetis, thank you very much for the super chat. Hello, doctor. I'm hypothyroid, male, 39 years old. 5'8", Oklahoma, 242, carnivore for 30 days, lost 8 pounds. Is goat meat enough because I can't get beef since I'm Hindu? Yeah, goat's great. Yeah, I mean, it's a ruminant, right? So it's very, very nutritious. It's very good for you. And yeah, absolutely. You can definitely do goat or lamb. And that's totally fine too. So yeah, absolutely. And, well done. You're already losing weight. You're doing well. You're hypothyroid. Make sure you're working with your doctor to get any sort of thyroid support that you need, if you need it. And hopefully this helps ramp up your body's ability to make thyroid hormone. I don't know why you're hypothyroid. Do check. Do you have Hashimoto's? Is there a reason, an underlying reason why you're hypothyroid? Is it just because the way you're eating is just slowing things down? That's very common. But Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease, and that gets better too. But I have over 100 patients with Hashimoto's, and I'm sure we'll see a few today. And antibodies just come right down, especially with red meat, the ruminant meat. So just goat. Yeah, so goat's fantastic. So definitely can do that. Nap, thank you for the super chat. How many hours of sleep do you get? Not as much as I'd like. I generally work till about midnight or past, and then I'm doing admin and emails and messages and scheduling things after that. So I don't get enough sleep because it's just too busy at the moment. I'm going to have to sort of look into that. I'm going to have to sort of cut back on the consultations and the interviews that I'm doing, because it's just every single day I'm going till midnight, and then I've got I get so many messages every day, 5 different email accounts and Instagram and all these other sorts of things. I just can't keep on top of it. And I would like to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. I'd like to get as much sleep as my body naturally wants, and I wake up naturally every day without an alarm. That's what I would like. But I don't always get that. So, but at the same time, because of the way I'm eating, I can handle it a lot better. But yeah, do get as much as you can. Do try to get to the point that you're not you're not waking up with an alarm, that you don't need to wake up with an alarm, because it's much better for you to get a proper amount of sleep. It's very important for you. It's very good for your brain and your body and everything else. So yeah, so do that. Don't get as much sleep as you possibly can. Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys. So Maya, thank you for the super chat. Will intermittent fasting help me lose weight while on carnivore? Yes and no, because the thing is that most of the time you'll naturally be doing something along those lines, where you'll be eating in a shorter amount of window, maybe only once a day. I typically eat once a day, twice a day at most, if I'm working out especially. And so that people say like, oh, well, you're intermittent fasting, you're doing that. I was like, well, no, I'm not, because what fasting is intentionally withholding food from when you're hungry and you want to eat, but you're like, no, I'm gonna abstain. That's what fasting is. Just not being hungry is just not being hungry. I mean, if I'm only hungry once a day and I eat once a day and I'm fine, that's not fasting, but it looks like it. It looks like you're intermittent fasting. So that's the yes part of it. The no part of it is if you're intentionally withholding food and you continually do that, and you do that, day after day after day, you're going to slow your metabolism down, and you can actually stall weight loss. And again, it's not weight loss, it's fat loss that you're looking for. You're not looking for weight loss. You don't want to lose muscle and bone. You want to lose fat. And so if you lose fat, but you put on muscle and bone, you're not going to lose weight. And so you need to remember that. And quite often when people are having a stall, it's not actually a stall. It's that they're working out and they're replacing their fat with the muscle and bone. Then you can do things like take Ozempic, that horrible poison that's been foisted across the planet, again, to make billions and billions and billions of dollars. The research on Ozempic for weight loss, by their own estimate, was that you'd lose weight generally because you felt so sick and just nauseated, you just couldn't eat. And then after that, after about 2 years, those symptoms would go away, your appetite would come back. And because you've just been eating just little bits of chocolate and candy the whole time because you couldn't stomach anything else, and you basically just starved yourself for the last 2 years, now you have horrific eating habits, and your appetite comes back. And then you eat a whole bunch of garbage, and then you end up putting on more weight than you lost initially. And the weight that you lost wasn't just fat. What they showed was that a large portion of this was actually lean body mass, was muscle mass and bone density, which you just can't afford to lose at any point in your life, especially when we get into middle and late age. But I mean, kids, I mean, why would you do that to kids? So you lose a lot of lean body mass. And then, so you're losing weight, but you're not losing the weight that's healthy. You're losing you're losing weight that is very unhealthy to lose. And then when you put weight back on, because you have such horrible eating habits, you put on fat. You're not getting back the muscle and bone. You're just getting back fat. You get back more fat than the muscle and bone that you lost. So after 2 years, people tended to regain more weight than they lost. So that's not good. So it's not about weight. It's about body composition. And really, it's about health. So you just eat what's healthy for you. And the body composition comes as a result of that. And that just happens down the road. That's a consequence. That's a secondary outcome. The primary outcome is your health. That's what the most important part of this is. And if you intentionally withhold meals and intentionally withhold from eating, you will slow down your metabolism, and you can stall, and you can actually start gaining weight eating less. Bariatric surgeons will tell you that, like women in particular, if they eat less than 1,200 calories a day, they will not lose weight. So they have to eat a minimum threshold to actually be able for their body to actually let go and let go of that excess fat, because they're storing it, because like, no, we're going to die. We need to save this. And because we're trying to save you. So your body doesn't know, it's not a conscious being. It's taking inputs, right? So the input is that there's no food available. Okay. We're in a famine. We're going to shut it down. And so that's what's going to happen. So no, I wouldn't do that. I would just eat until fatty meat stops tasting good. If that's once a day, it's once a day. If that's twice a day, it's twice a day. If that's 32 times a day, it's 32 times a day. It won't be. You eat until you get that bite that tastes like cardboard. Typically, when people are losing weight, that's going to be once a day, twice at the outside. But just make sure you're getting enough fatty meat until it stops tasting good. You generally won't eat all that much, and you'll look like you're intermittent fasting, but you won't actually be fasting. You'll just be eating when you're hungry, and that's what you do. And that's the other thing. When you do these tricks and gimmicks, and you're fasting and starving and doing all these sorts of things, eventually you get to the end of it and you just go, okay, well, something's got to change because this isn't sustainable. Or the Ozempic, and you're losing weight, and now your appetite comes back, and now what happens? Now your pattern of behavior and how you're functioning is now incongruent with a healthy lifestyle. Whereas if you're just eating fatty meat until it stops tasting good, you can do that at any day, at any point, at any stage in your life, because at different times you're going to need more or less. And if you're just listening to your body and eating until it stops tasting good, your body's going to tell you what it needs. Today it needs 4,000 calories. Tomorrow it needs 3,000. Next day it needs 4,000. Now it needs 2,000. Now it needs 5,000. It doesn't matter. It's going to change on different days. If you're losing fat and your body eventually gets down to a stable body fat percentage, you're going to need more. That's all there is to it, because you're not going to be going on your fat stores anymore. You need to actually get more energy and nutrients in to run your body and maintain your body fat. And so that's what you do, and your appetite goes up. And so by the time you get to that stable point, now you have the eating habits and the lifestyle that are going to be conducive to perpetuate that, right? So that's really important, to just lay down patterns of behavior that you're going to be able to continue and perpetuate for the rest of your life, to continue to get maximal results and the most benefit out of out of your life and on your health. That actually changes your odor, and so that can be a thing too. It's not necessarily butter and tallow. It could be because your hormones are changing, and that's affecting the way your body smells. And so that's not necessarily a bad thing. Butter smells nice. That's just my opinion, but I'm not wrong. And so it may be different, but it's probably not that much of an issue.